Hello and welcome to another edition of your favourite podcast, Insane in the Membrane.
Insane in the Membrane.
Hello everybody. I am up at the Fringe. I'm in Edinburgh. I'm sitting in the lounge of where I'm staying. The lovely Sandra is putting us up. A wonderful lady with a beautiful dog called Uther. Wonderful Doberman. He's got the biggest head in the world. Always smash my knees off when he comes running at you. Good dog doing good things. Big shout out to our patrons. Thank you so much, everybody, for helping us keeping the lights on. Your wonderful donations really help us out. And thank you to our new patrons for joining us. Welcome aboard. We don't want to wang on about it too much, but what we will say to you is this: if you want to see this episode, you want to see the video of this, it is exclusive to our patrons. So if you want to see what Al Murray, and he's our guest this week, you want to see what Al Murray, so what his room looks like when we were talking to him, the video is exclusively available to our patrons. So become a patron, then you can see the video. How about that? All right. So our guest this week, he's going to be up at the Fringe, actually, at the end of the Fringe. I've seen the posters up for him already. My show starts today, so I'm a bit on the edge, a bit nervous. I'm also going to be a hedgehog in Phil Ellis's show. His show called Hedgehog, and he realised when he got up here, there's no hedgehogs in it. So I'm going to be a hedgehog, and I'm going to come on and be a hedgehog in his show. So I'm going to do that later on. So if you're in Edinburgh and you come and see me just as a hedgehog, it's going to be good. But Al Murray is our guest, the pub landlord, Al Murray. I've been a massive fan of Al Murray ever since I can remember, really. He's always been kind of involved in the TV shows that I was watching when I was growing up. I'm actually growing up, he's my age, so you know, but it was good to see him like morph into what became the pub landlord. And so it was an absolute, I was beside myself with happiness when producer Paul said Al Murray's coming on. And so I was a bit nervous, you know, because when you admire someone like that, you're kind of like, oh, I don't want to fuck it up. And I didn't. It was bloody marvellous. We had such a good chat. He's such a sweet man. We covered all manner of bases. It was fantastic. So, with that in mind, coming up in a minute is Al Murray.
A podcast from producer Paul.co.uk.
Insane in the Membrane.
Hi.
Good to see you. What a wonderful setup you've got, mate. Look at that.
Well, I've got a little home studio. There's a drum kit over there, because I'm a Monkey musician, a wannabe musician. So that's why I've got all the gear. No idea. That's the deal, basically.
Who's your favourite drummer of all time?
Phil Collins in his pomp back in the day.
Yeah, nice.
Before he became a pop star. Yeah.
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 Absolutely. Mine was always Stuart Copeland.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But the thing is, those answers betray vintage, because there are an awful lot of people since then who are really, really great, but I'm not much interested. Because I'd say Phil Collins, Stuart Copeland, they're in the same breath, really. I think.
Yeah. It's funny because I drummed for a bit. I wasn't good
really?
enough. Yeah, my youngest son's a drummer. He's at BIM in Bristol.
Oh wow.
He's
really?
He's a great drummer. And
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's cool.
My dad said it sounded like someone trying to push a shed down the stairs when I drummed. So,
well, my dad never offered an opinion, so I mean, maybe you should have done. I mean, I'm an enthusiastic amateur. Is the way I see it. There we go. But like saying, all the gear, no idea. Yeah.
It's good to see you, Al. It's good to see you. Yes, I am up in Edinburgh.
Likewise.
The person I'm staying with, actually, and you were just talking about off air. You were talking about not remembering the 90s, as you shouldn't. It was what a time to be alive. She remembers getting drunk with you and Harry in Jersey about 30 years ago.
Who is this lady?
Her name's Sandra, Scottish lady. And she remembers getting drunk.
I mean, I imagine so. I do remember getting drunk in Jersey with Harry Hill. We played some sort of art centre, and there was nowhere to go, so we got pissed.
That was it.
Is she a comedian now, or are you just staying in a flat?
We're just staying in her house. She's a very generous lady, and she said that she'd gone off and had a conversation about enlightenment.
Yeah,
it might have been you or Harry.
That would have been me. Yeah. The thing about the Enlightenment. Yeah.
30 years ago, that was you all
Yeah,
bright-eyed
Don't
and
tune much.
what I have noticed up here, though, well, I'm having a bit of a. I came up here Wednesday and a bit of a wander around, and I've clocked a couple of shows. Everybody's talking about mental health up here now.
Yeah.
Every show is ADHD and this and the other, and it's quite astonishing how many people are suddenly having a thing.
Yeah.
I
know.
I
saw the article about ADHD and I thought I need to get me some of that to get in a paper.
Well, you're in the arts, mate. You probably got it.
Well, it seemed to be. A lot of what. I mean, this article that's in the Times. It seemed to be that a lot of it kind of fits the requirements of a stand-up comic, perhaps. I mean, it's not to say because I'm always a bit wary of the whole kind of comedians are all we're all terribly unhappy. And we're all, it's Tony Hancock basically, because Tony Hancock took his life. There's a kind of implication that we're all supposed to want to do that, and obviously, I'm not much interested. And but you know what I mean. There is this, and the sad clown and the Pagliacci joke and all that sort of stuff. But it does seem that reading that ADHD thing, it did. I mean, it did, I'm not a fan of self-diagnosis, but it did sound like, all right, okay, so there's this sort of magpie mind thing where you're grabbing bits and pieces of things and you're moving on all the time. I mean, one of the requirements of stand-up is to sort of keep moving and not get stuck and all that sort of thing. If you're going to last, that's unfortunately what you have to do.
Yeah,
to ditch all your good jokes and come up with some new ones,
Well, this is it. I remember having a conversation with someone years ago and just saying, I'm fed up with my material and I want to do something else. And it was like, well, go on then. It's all on you. Isn't it? It's not like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, exactly. Just write some more.
Yeah, do what you did before, but do it differently.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that. I mean, I think sometimes as a stand-up, you're in permanent difficult second album mode for your, because the first stuff you write, you tend to arrive at quite slowly, and it's a kind of and the thrill of discovering that you can make it work, and then then you've got to. If you've got any sense after a Fringe, you tear the thing up and you start again. You just start again. I mean, maybe you're touring the old one, but you start another one, right? But so you're in permanent difficult second album sort of state after the initial thrill of discovering you can make people laugh and the appalling kind of damage that does to your ego and the.
Then you have to realise you have to keep pumping the balloon up to keep it floating.
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
Do you find it easy? Because I mean, the pub landlord it just became it's such a huge character. Do you find it easier to write now that it's all the pub landlord is almost a real person all of his own?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I was talking to John Robbins the other day, and we're talking about coming up to Edinburgh. He says, "Oh, it's great, because it's already sold out. So the minute that they're there to see you, he's, you're no longer, you're sort of on probation for a really long time when you start out. The audiences have got you on probation, and they'll revoke that probation if you say boring for 5 minutes, or whatever. You know what I mean? And once you're well known." That all kind of dissipates. There'll be the odd person who turns out and goes, well, I heard you were good and it turns out you're shit. But I am blessed that I'm very fortunate. I've been doing this thing such a long time. The blazer is really well recognised. The style is, what I find quite funny is every now and again someone pops up on Twitter and goes, look at you kip arsehole. I'm like, oh, for God's sake, how long do I need to have done this? Or you fat Tory, how long do I need to have done this? For you to for people to figure out what's going on here, and I don't mind that people don't get it because lots of people don't get lots of things, and not you can get a joke and not like it. That's fine too. You know what I mean? But it's just the people who sort of, after all this time, of course it's an act. What do you mean? Don't make me explain it. when you're dealing with someone and in the end you feel like you got to. Oh, please don't make me. please don't make me say this. Please don't make me say the thing where you say, you know, basically like, have you switched it on yet, or have you you know what I mean? Have you checked that the boiler's switched on? You know, there's no hot water.
Yeah.
Have you checked that? Don't make me fucking say it. And sometimes with the pub landlord, I feel like, please don't make me say it. You know, don't make me say it. But anyway, no, I'm very, very lucky, you know, and that's just sort of perseverance and bloody mindedness and sticking around, and also, although people always say to me, oh, it's the same, you know, where have you? It hasn't changed. He hasn't changed much. But the material, every time I go out with a new tour title, it's a different show. I mean, it really is. Like, hand on heart, it really is. But, you know, what can you do? People make your mind up about you.
Well, this time I heard someone said to me once ago, yeah, but that's probably the real him and he's using it to voice his real views. And you're going, you're not even listening to what the character's saying or how he says it.
Yeah. I mean, given that it's full of tripwires anyway for itself, you know, it's full of, he cancels himself out all the time. So what if those are my real views? They're my real views that cancel themselves out. What? I mean, I don't know. I don't know anymore. And anyway, it's just supposed to be a piece of entertainment. So in first principles and in last principles, what's in between is inside the sandwich is different. But like, it's just meant to be. It's just a piece of entertainment.
I know.
Leave me alone.
What I remember the first time I saw you, and seeing you since. Your crowd work is phenomenal. How it's just how you just scoop each of them up, and then you remember, you go back and just, because that's because now what I've noticed, people respond more when it's about the audience. They want it more. I don't know if that's because society's changing. They're a bit more self-involved or whatever. I don't know, but
maybe,
you know. But they seem to love it, and and when you do it, it's next level. You know,
well, thanks. That's very sweet. That's very sweet of you to say, Rich. I mean, it's a thing I really worked on at one point. I actually put sort of concerted effort into trying to figure out how to do it. But also, you also want it to not be. You want it to be like being a play. You know, you like the piano. You've done your scales, so you're not playing scales. You know how to do it. You just know where the notes are, and you sort of want it to. I wanted to work hard for it to be like that. But because of the character, because he would do that, he would come on and go, because he doesn't belong on a stage. He would come on and go, who the fuck are you? And what's your name? What do you do? Jesus Christ, what a waste of time. And after, he's just a barman. So like, you know, I've got brain surgeons I've called time wasters. So you know what I mean? So it's the thing, because he's judgy of everything. So the minute when you do a thing, you don't have to explain it. You know, it's this idea of action as character. So by doing it, you're showing what he's like without having to tell any jokes necessarily. Because sometimes writing jokes for characters to set them up is quite a high wire activity. Because I used to have a joke way back when I was first doing it probably when I was having a conversation with your flatmate back in the 90s. I used to have this joke which would be, I do this stuff and then I go, well, look, hold on, I'm all for equality. That's why I let my female staff work longer so they can earn the same as the men. Right? I'm not sexist, was the joke, right?
Yeah.
And every now and again, someone will go, "You sexist pig," in a club, and you think, "Oh God!" But that would be that. It'll be over then. And there'd be no getting the thing back on its legs after that kind of disruption, right? Because the pub landlord thinks he's saying the right thing, but it's the wrong thing because he contradicts himself, because that's part of the joke. Anyway, so I used to find it a real high wire to like do an opening bit that would set the character up well enough. So actually, simpler to come on and show what he's like by having him talk to people, and it fits him. So it's sort of, luckily it's a kind of dual purpose thing. Although in recent years I've moved it around, and now they know who I am. I can come on and do opening stuff because they know what to expect from me. So I've actually, the last sort of 2-3 shows I've come on and gone hello, and then done a 15-minute what we're going to do tonight, and then but before I do all that, I need to get to know who you are, and then you see them all shit themselves.
But he doesn't take any prisoners, does he? Straight in, yeah.
Well, why? You know, given the character, he wouldn't, would he? So, and you know, and also, I mean, it's really a long time ago. I did a thing with Dawn French, right? And Clonk, and she wanted to sort of talk about what we were going to do. It was on my old talk show. We didn't used to tell the guests anything. We used to just ambush them relentlessly.
Yeah.
And because that was the best way to get a proper reaction out of them, see if they had a sense of humour about themselves, rather than give them warning and say, oh, then we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. Anyway, she said, so we had a little chat about it. And because she was a comedian, I thought, we'll let this go for a comic. And we talked through it, and she goes, "Oh right, I get it. We're just here to play, aren't we? We're just here to play together. We're just playing." And you think, and the minute you think of it like that, all that stuff about what can you say, what can't you say, comes back to the idea that you and the audience trust each other.
Yes.
They trust you. You trust them. The people that in your life make you laugh are the people you trust, right?
Yeah.
Or you gain their trust through laughter. Because that's actually what laughter is about. It's about trust. It's not about surprise, timing, being edgy, being rude, being absurd, talking about yourself. It's about trust.
Yeah.
And whenever people discuss comedy, they leave that out, and that's why they misunderstand. That's why they so often misunderstand what's going on and how it all works. Because after all, an edgy comic, his audience trusts him to say terrible things because that's the deal, right? And they trust him, and he trusts them to understand that's what's going on. You know, you watch Frankie Boyle, the whole point of what he's doing is what he's doing, and they know that, he knows that. That's the game they're playing together, the act of trust together. The same with you know, at the other end of the scale, say Michael McIntyre, you know, and the real edgy moment would be if Michael did Frankie stuff and Frankie did Michael stuff. And they both broke trust with their audiences, and then it wouldn't be funny anymore.
No.
And I always think people just forget about this because they need to race to the idea of, oh, whether edgy is, you know, one of the comedy needs to be edgy. That's no. It's one of the means to the ends, and the ends is to make people laugh. And I always think people just. Yeah. I just think it's really frustrating whenever, especially when you read an article in a newspaper and you think, right, okay, this is all fine, but you've completely left out how this actually works.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. You're the first person that said it. And since I've been doing comedy, I've been in the industry 20 years. You're the first person I've ever heard mention the word trust.
But that's it. Yeah. That's it. And the thing is, when you're an open spot, you have to come on and bargain for your trust. And then when you're a full literally, right? Yeah. And then when you're a full spot, you've kind of got your trust. And when you're well known like me, the audience basically trusts you, right? And understands what the deal is and all this sort of thing. And I think this is why when people do talk about, you know, because you know, there's this recent legislation in Scotland about what you can and can't say, right? And the problem is when it talks about comedians, it leaves out the fact that the audience trusts the comic trusts the audience. That's the deal. And if we all have our own edge rather than there is an edge, right? Yes. You know, my set has its edge, my character has its edge, which I can fall off, right? And yours does too, and other people's do. So there are as many edges as there are comedians. So there's no point talking about edgy comedy. It's just meaningless.
That's so true. It is true. I've never heard that before.
Well, no one ever asks me, is the thing. Whenever you see those articles about comedy, I think, why don't you talk to some fucking comics about this? Yeah. Right? Who've been around a really long time, rather than people who are in an audience once who've discovered they don't really like going to comedy.
It's true.
Which is what these things often are, you know.
Just rush through. They grab the nearest person. What do you think of this? Yeah. Oh, well, it's this. All right, thanks for coming. And
exactly.
Well, the other thing I like about your stuff is that there is an intelligence there. I'm not patronising you. I mean, you've obviously studied. You've obviously you're very like some of the stuff you talk about. Like historic stuff and the details that you go into, and you're like, and that's not just you just sat flicking through a big book. I imagine. I mean, it sounds like you've studied it, at length.
Yeah, some of it. I mean, I always think that the sometimes the thing to do is show an ankle, and they assume there's a leg there. You know what I mean? I used to do a thing where I'd do a whole load in German. Right, I do a whole load of stuff in German.
Yeah.
And people go, "Oh my God, he speaks fluent German." I don't. My sister does. So I'd use Google Translate now rather than waste her time. I needed sort of 4 or 5 sentences. So I wrote to her, "Go, can you tell me how this goes, right, in German?" And I learned it, right? And as a result, people are going, "My God, he speaks fluent German." I don't. I could speak the the 8 phrases she'd given me. But sometimes there is some history stuff where it comes from the thing I'm interested in as much as anything else. But I'm also, the other thing because I'm interested in history, the thing I'm really interested in is what people think history is, and what they think they know, and what exists in the sort of in the cultural discourse rather than in what they're telling each other at university. Because I think that's the for a comedian, that's the stuff that's fun to play with. After all, the pandemic, it was inevitably compared to the Second World War, inevitably, because there are only 2 things in history that we know about in Britain. That's the Second World War and Henry VIII. And you couldn't compare the pandemic. You couldn't compare the pandemic to Anne Boleyn.
So that is why they always go back to that, or when we won the World Cup in '66, and it's just those things.
Or the World Cup in '66. That's basically it. It's certainly in English culture. I mean, obviously in Scotland it's slightly different, but not much, right? So you've got that. I mean, I think it's really funny that. So because at one point during Brexit, people were going, "Oh, this is just like when Henry VIII broke with the Church of Rome." And you're like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, that's 500 years ago. Some other things have happened that you might be able to compare it with, but this is the only one you know about. Yeah, and you can't compare it to D-Day. So that's why you."
What they don't talk about as well, they talk about the Second World War, they talk about Blitz spirit and everyone came together.
Yeah.
And they go, it was the same as the pandemic. Everyone, but they didn't. People didn't come together on a Thursday. They did, but then after that, they were back to running around like the zombies were outside.
But that's the same with the Second World War. So if you look at there's a really amazing book by a woman called Millie Panty Davis, I think. Millie Panty Davis, I think that was her name. Anyway, she was writing a London diary for the New Yorker or something in 1939, all the way through the war, right?
Yeah.
And she's going on about, she sat in a pub in early 1940, people are going, "I'm not going to stick to this blackout. This blackout's totally stupid. Why should I have to do that? Why are they rationing fuel? Nothing's really kicked off yet. This is a complete pain in the arse," right? And so basically, they're complaining because although it's 80 years ago, and we're obviously not the same country. It's the thing George Orwell says, when you look at a picture of yourself when you're 5, that's you, right? But you're not that person anymore, but that is you. And so this country's a bit like that, it's a bit like a picture of the 5-year-old in the 1940s. The sort of argumentative tendencies, the grumbling, the groaning, the people who know better, all that's right. That's all going on all the way through the Second World War. Yes, we did pull together, but kind of in a like, "Oh, fucking hell, have we got to do this, have we?" way. And an awful lot of people finding ways to not. So, I mean, just... the Craze father hid in the coal hole for the whole of the war to avoid conscription.
Yes, he did. It's that. But they make it sound like they were all running down the street and knocking on doors, going, "Come on, we've got to go to the underground station quickly now." Gathering people. We're really like, for fuck's sake. We got nicking things off each other, nicking whatever, exactly. They make out like you got your rations and nobody stole from anybody else. Everybody just stuck to their.
Really? I mean, it'd be mad if they didn't. They wouldn't be human beings if that wasn't going on. So much of it. Anyway, but yeah, I don't know how we ended up on that. But basically, this is the thing. This is one of the things I'm interested about history. Is that, we're talking about exactly there how things like the Blitz are in the public discourse and they mean things, and then when you examine them, they mean things, but they don't necessarily mean the things they're meant to mean. And when like any proper piece of history, it's like an onion. You just keep peeling it, and you'll never get to the centre.
No,
you never find out the truth.
No, I find it interesting. What's been coming up the last few years is the talk about people being more fluid, not just in their sexuality, but just in their very being. Like you're neither good or bad. You kind of wherever you are at the moment, moment in time, you know, you've been a bit shitty, or you've been a bit moody, or you've been great, and you've been a bit of a legend, but you're not one thing all the time.
Well, no one, but the thing is no one ever is, and so it's a sort of to test yourself against a thing that isn't realistic. That's how you drive yourself crazy, isn't it? You know, basically.
Yeah. I find it fascinating, all that, because you're making decisions every second, every millisecond, all the way through your day. Like, if I do that, I'm gonna do that. If I do that, you know, and you do, and at the minute with social media, people are just shouting at each other constantly. If it just gives me a fucking headache, and you just
it's funny because I can get very. It's the weirdest thing. I get very sort of. Sometimes I get completely destabilised by seeing just the strangest small thing on a social media post where you see someone say something probably about me, right? I'll think, what God, and then I can carry it around with me, like for whole days, thinking, oh God, if I hadn't considered. But very often it's because, you know, I chug along in my little bubble, assuring myself that everything's tickety-boo, and then you see a thing and it may not be true or not, but you know, it's that thing of, oh God, you know, someone thinks that, damn, and you hang on to it. I mean, it's like the you know, the bad reviews from 20 years ago I can recite to you. I can't remember the good ones.
We always hang on to the bad stuff. We do.
I know. It's amazing. I used to have a like a stage door correspondent who would send stuff. I'd get to a theatre, there'd be an envelope for me, written in this absolute like stabby handwriting, like sliding across the page.
Yeah.
And what that person would do was tear reviews out of newspapers and send them to me. And you'd get to the theatre, it'd be pinned to the pinboard coming at the stage door. You'd see the handwriting, think, oh fucking hell, here we go, right? And I remember once they'd sent me a 2-star review, right? And then I read it like 2 or 3 times and was convulsed with, you know, like, and then go on stage with it going on in my head. He does this, he does that, all this sort of thing. And you think, I'd avoided reviews deliberately. This spider person had been sending them to me. I mean, maybe it was me. Maybe the handwriting's so bad because it was me in my sleep sending them to me as some sort of warning, you know.
The real you just going like, just have a word with yourself. This is what's really going on.
Exactly.
Do you find
this is who you really are?
Yeah, this is it, you. You should be doing this. Do you find it frustrating sometimes though, because the pub landlord has become such a big part of everybody knows the pub landlord. It's become a part of us, like Mr. Bean. Like, it's a character everybody knows, you know. I'm not comparing the two either, I'm not doing that, but
yeah,
you know, but do you get frustrated sometimes when, because I know I've seen you do shows before with other characters trying to do different things. Do you get a bit frustrated sometimes if another one doesn't catch, or you're like, you know, you love the pub landlord?
Well, yeah. I mean, we did do another character show, and they didn't want any more of it, and we could have one of those boring paranoid conversations about, well, you know, I was at a meeting and, you know, I said the wrong thing and all that, you know, all that sort of stuff. And there was a new exec came in and there was a change in the guard, and then so I got ditched and blah blah. And they wanted Jonathan Ross instead or whatever. We could do that. But I did find it very frustrating because I did think this is a hop off point to sort of do a bit more of stuff. But none of them had been you know, tried out live. So I didn't. When we did that and we finished that, I had very little appetite to take them out and see if they would work live at all. And also, they all existed in their sketch environments. And the advantage to pub landlord is he does not exist in the sketch of this. The sketch, if you want to call it that. And that's what cab drivers go. You can use this in one of your sketches. They go, I don't do sketches. What are you talking about? But the audience are the other character in the sketch of the pub landlord. So there's, as it were. So there's no. But you know, because I had this, and it was completely based on someone I once stayed with, right? So I had my first girlfriend when I went to university. This lovely woman, and she was from Bradford on Avon or somewhere like that. And I think I don't remember exactly where she's from because it's been basically blasted from my memory by what happened. But so we go for a weekend after Christmas, and in the morning, he sort of bounds down and goes, I heard you two at it last night. God, that and you're like, God, fucking hell. Right? I was like, she was having a fine old time, both of you were, and you're like, oh my God, Jesus fucking Christ, right? So I, and you know, and I was 19, 20, I was a different, I was a different person then, like the person in the photo, and I was mortified by it, but basically stored that up. So we did him on the. Another load of sketches with him, bursting in and going, "You need to try this sex toy." And all that ghastly, right? And the thing is, I thought that was really funny, and I really liked the idea of it. But how you do that live, I just don't know.
Yeah.
And the thing is one of the things is, because I've cracked one character live, doesn't mean I have the answers to how on earth you do anymore. It's taken me. You know, I still don't think I quite know what I'm doing. It's taken me 30 years to get to the point where I am now. God, fuck. You know, I don't want to start again. And the thing is if we'd done another series, there would have been surely been an opportunity to tour some of them because people would have trusted the characters. You know, it's the trust thing.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they were going to get, and then we'd have been able to do it. But yeah, I do. I've always wondered. I mean, I've only done a couple of tiny acting jobs. I've always fancied acting, but you know, the phone never rings, and I'm very busy, so it kind of there it is. I don't want to offer my Hamlet or anything, but I could probably do a good bottom. That sort of thing.
But it's been, I mean, you've been doing it. How did you get started?
Well, I got started. I went to Oxford, so I'm one of these Oxbridge toffee nosed fucking comedians, and on my first day at university, I met Stuart Lee and Richard Herring in the music room at the college I was at, because I had a drum kit and I was taking it down to the cellar there. Yeah. And they said, "Oh, we're doing a comedy show next." I said, "Who are you two?" So we're doing a comedy show next week. And I said, "Oh right, there's comedy, is there?" Because I didn't know. And there was a thing. Someone had a fortnightly thing where you could turn up and do stuff. And you had to write new stuff every week. You weren't allowed to recite Monty Python, which is what basically everybody was doing in 1987. You weren't allowed to do that. You weren't allowed to do Mr. Creosote. You weren't allowed to do, Half a Crowd for an Old Ex-Leper. You weren't allowed to do any of that stuff. You had to write your own thing. And it was run by a guy called Tony Brennan, who's no longer with us. He's a lovely, lovely, lovely bloke who died 2-3 years ago. Or 3 years ago. Everything happened in 2019. And he ran this thing. And I went along to that, and I bullied some mates into forming a little sketch group. And then we just did that every fortnight, and then put on a show in our second term. And basically, I started thinking, this is, I think, probably what I want to do. Yeah. But I have no idea how on earth I do it. Because everything I'd been sort of primed for up to that point was, I don't know, being a lawyer or being a civil servant or whatever. And there's no stand-up comedy exam, there's no like civil service exam. There's no, there's no job interview, blah blah blah, all that. So I kind of thought, well, there are 4 stand-up comedians. There's Billy Connolly, there's Ben Elton, Rick Mayall does something, but I don't think it's stand-up, and then there's Kelly Monteith, but I haven't seen much, and Jasper Katz, so 5 people. Yeah, exactly. At the Victoria Wood, and you kind of think, well, there's 6 people. Those jobs have all been taken. The Victoria Wood job's been taken. So how do I do this? And basically, it was by going to the Fringe, and I went to the Fringe in 1988 with a sketch troupe, with a kids show. We were in a kids show, and we did our own little sketch troupe, and then we did following year 1989 in an Oxford revue show that Stuart Lee directed, and was declared as the worst show on the Fringe by the Independent and the Observer, which is a real badge of pride for us.
Oh yeah,
and it didn't put us off. And then I sort of I had this other act doing sound effects and stuff, and I just sort of got into going on the circuit. But I mean, I've got a 19-year-old, and she's at drama school and all this, and the sheer difference. And I know this is like my dad going on about the 50s right now. We're in an absolute parallel. Well, what it was like at the end of the 50s is you could get a job for life. And I'm like, well, no. And I remember in the 80s the end of the 80s going, there are no fucking jobs for life anymore, Dad. What are you talking about? But basically, you could move to London and live in West Nord or somewhere for, I don't know, 120 quid a week.
Yeah.
and you could claim housing benefit if you were unemployed. There was no such thing as UC. Some people got a small business allowance to set themselves up as stand-up comics. I remember Rich Herring did that. He went to the... Yeah. And you could... And that's why, my generation, there's an awful lot of people with fake names. It's because they were all signing on. And it was the only way to get started.
Of course.
And it was all just so much. There were more clubs, because there were more clubs, and they did all pay. I know they all still pay the same as they did in 1991, but there were more clubs, and you could just hammer the circuit and get good. And there were like 50 gigs a week that you could do. That you could ring the bloke in, the bloke or woman in time out. You get time out. You look at the list. There's no internet, so you look at the list of clubs, phone numbers of the venues. You'd ring them. You get the promoter's number. Hello, got lots of cold calling. Hello, my name's Al Murray. Can I get an open spot, please?
Yeah,
all that. But you could afford it. It was much, 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 much more affordable coming to London, and I think that is essentially the difference. Not a lot of people work two jobs. Not a lot of people. There were some people who were sort of teachers and stuff, but not a lot of people would work a job as well as being a comic back in those days, because London was just so much cheaper. It was all just that was all so much easier.
Yeah.
I think
that's the problem now.
It's a fucking shame. Yeah.
It's really difficult now there aren't many comics that don't have a second job now. It's just, and it's because of the price of travelling as well. It's going to become regional again, because you can't go anywhere. So you're going to end up with London comics and Yorkshire comics, and that's a real shame. Yeah. It is a real shame.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Well, then it'll become the new normal, and then there'll be a thing where people. I mean, what people will now be saying is you don't need to go to London. You can do it.
That is what they say. Yeah.
Which is. Maybe for the better as well. So, but you could afford to go to London. Is my point. You could do it. It wasn't impossible. But all those. I lived in West Norwood, and then I lived in Tooting, and I lived in a bit of Clapham, and I lived in Peckham Rye, not Peckham. Where was it? East Dulwich, but in the Peckham End, and all those places have now they've all been gentrified to the max.
Oh God, yeah.
And you wouldn't be able to do it. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, anyway, that's the thing that really strikes me about the mass. Because when I say to my daughter, "Oh, you want to do you want to get some stage time?" She looks at me like I'm mad.
But you've seen
about stage time, love.
You've seen the Fringe change as well, though, over the years.
Yeah.
What it is now. I mean, it used to be comics be writing their shows either as when they got there or on the train on the way up.
Yeah.
And now
it used to be brilliant. Everyone sat in a bar at the Pleasance, going, "Have you written yours yet?" sort of thing. And go, "Oh, well, I've written 45 of it. Well, I don't know how I'm going to get to the hour." And all that. And then a lot of people would, and because it's the Stone Age, right? A lot of people would have have some slides, right? Because there'd be and you'd basically get quarter of an hour, squeeze 10, 15 out of some slides that you'd point out and say funny things about and pad it out. But I mean, it was, the thing is getting up to an hour was more difficult. So there were less opportunities. That seems to have changed a bit. There's more sort of your hen and chickens and things now than there used to be. So getting an hour together was a sort of a bit more difficult. And I used to kind of have two sets that I'd do on the circuit, and I'd do the A set, the B set, and then glue them together in the kind of previews I'd get for Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Or basically cheat and overrun, and because there was extendeds was a thing. I don't know if it's still the case, but where you get to do 40. So basically, you'd get some extendeds in, and then I'd overrun and sort of bully my way into extra time. or I used to compare. I used to compare a lot and try the modules out, because I used to write
that's
sort
what
of modular.
Yeah.
Comparing's the secret. It's the answer to getting really slick, because you get to open, you get to close, you get to come on in the middle when they're bored, and you have to deal with all of the circumstances,
Yes.
and you get longer on stage.
Yeah, I say that to everybody whenever I've been asked advice. I always say that. Yeah, MC. You must MC.
Yeah.
It'll just loosen you up and prepare you for anything that'll happen in the room.
Yeah, that was Frank Skinner's advice to me. He said, just get some comparing work. and you'll be fine.
Yeah,
and I think I used to do a bit of that with the pub landlord, and it worked really well, because you'd be in a club in a pub, and it would just sort of, it would make sense, you know. It would make the evening sort of smell of something, you know.
Yeah.
Beer mainly, but
it's interesting what you said earlier when we were talking about how comedians are sort of perceived, like this kind of, we exist for 20 minutes, half an hour on stage.
Yeah.
That's when we're at our happiest, and the rest of the time we're fashioning a noose out of the curtain ties, you know. It's just, and it's not like you say. It's not like that. It's like everybody. We have our ups and downs, don't we? We have our days.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, although I'm happy to be wrong on this, because I don't know everybody, but I think comics are kind of like the essentially the same cross section of people as any given profession. So there are people who are up, there are people who are down, there are shaggers, there are people who are monogamous, there are people who are interested in money, there are people who are not, there are people who are dreamers, there are people who are hard-headed. There's just every kind of person, actually.
Yeah.
But the thing they've all got in common, Dave John said this, the thing they've all got in common is they're all slightly touched because they want to go on stage. They want people to laugh at them. And even the people, because I always think it's really interesting, even the people who are terribly nervous and are throwing up before they go on, they still go on. They still do it.
Yeah.
And that's the one where I go, that's the really interesting one for me, because I don't like being nervous, and sometimes every now and again I get a tiny rare moment where I'm nervy mainly because it's new stuff and I don't know it, or I'm rusty, and I get a little tremor and anxiety. But it's the people who like I say, the people who are vomiting, and you sort of think, well, don't do it then.
yeah. It's not for you.
You don't have to do this. It's not for you. Or if it is for you, you poor bastard.
I remember in the first lockdown, and a brilliant comic, Paul Perry, I was talking to him, and he said, the thing is, Rich, we need the stage, we need the applause, and I was like, it was the first time I realised, I'm like, I don't need it. I like it, and I love doing what I do, but I don't need it. And that was the difference.
Well, you know what? That really touches on something I went through a lot of this during the pandemic, because when it first came, the first one came, I was about to go back out on the road and give the 2019 Lemon one final squeeze, right? and we were literally going to open on the Friday where they locked down. So we were doing previews, and there was a preview the weekend before when coronavirus was really getting motoring. And I said to and I'd been I thought the whole thing was ridiculous, and because a friend of the family was the bloke in the paper who was like patient zero for a bit. The bloke had come back from France or whatever, and I'm going, I know the fucking bloke, or I know a bloke who knows the bloke. I'm like that about it, like, and then it's like, shit, Western civilization is being switched off for a few months. Anyway, and I said to myself, well, this is fine. We can stop. I can stop. I can go home. I can be with my family. I'm not going to go up and down the motorway. And I said to myself, you know what? You've been doing this a long time. You've had a good ride. You've got everything you could possibly want out of this, and you don't need the laughs anymore. You're in your early 50s. You're a complete person. And I told myself that for quite a long time. And then you can see where this is going. And then Math Brown rings me and goes, I've got some gigs down in Kingston or somewhere like that, Hampton Wick or somewhere. Do you want to come down? It's just in a beer garden. I said, well, I haven't really got any stuff. He said, don't worry about that. You'll be all right. So I came down and did half an hour in a pub garden, and I was sky high, for the rest of the weekend. Like, my wife's like, what's wrong with you? And like, oh God, because I think it's because I got some laughs, and I realised, I mean, maybe it's the satisfaction of a job well done rather than I desperately need them psychologically. Yeah. But it is, I do absolutely love what I do. And then when we were in the second lockdown, the start of last year, and that was going on and on and on and on and on, I was beginning to think the theatres will have all gone broke. The theatres it's going to be over. And also, if they can't get, because I did a couple of gigs in that autumn which were like distant, so you'd have like a third of the people in the venue. You're thinking this will never work. This is like economic suicide. This whole thing, we're finished. And I was saying to myself, we're finished. It's over. And that made me really, really, really miserable that second time around. And I was really, really down about how on earth the world was going to work out after that, because of that, during that second lockdown. Yeah. Because I thought they're never going to get this vaccine up. Don't be ridiculous. It's not being. I was really like cynical about that. They'll never be able to do that. And obviously, what they did was they pumped so much money into it, they solved the problem, which is kind of proof that if you pump tons of money into something, you can solve a problem. Which don't tell the government that did that. Whatever you do. But you know what I mean? So I was so miserable. I was completely blue. March, April of last year, and thought it's over. It's finished. Yeah. And not even that you had a good runway. Like, it's over, it's finished, and you love this and you love this life, and it's fucked. And I was I thought we were done for. I really did.
Yeah, true. I did. And there was that gig that we did at the Clapham Grand, and you were emceeing it with my ex-partner Jade, and there was no audience in the room, just the crew doing the cameras, and there were you didn't know it. There's no feedback, because that's the thing. You don't know if you're doing well or not. And I did a similar gig at the Bill Murray to no one, not even the crew minding the cameras. They were downstairs. I was in a room in a pub. And it wasn't until after, and people messaged me and went, mate, that was all right, that was good, it was good. And you go, but I just didn't. I still enjoyed it, and I still there was a sense of achievement having done it. I think it might have been the same thing with the Clapham Grand. You can't
no, definitely. And there were, there was also that kind of comedians all in a lifeboat together. It's your turn to paddle. But yeah, I did a couple. I ended up doing a lot of stuff with James Gill with Always Be, where we would do a thing on a Monday night, do a quiz on a Monday night. We did that for weeks and weeks, months and months and months, and it was really good fun. And that became like a little trusted group, with 25 people on the screen and all the in jokes up and running, and it was really good fun. Because I did one really early on, one of those Zoom gigs where I'm looking like here in my costume with the green screen, looking down the lens to nothing, and then you'd see that this is a bit shit coming up in the corner of your eye up on the side of the screen. You think, why have I agreed to this? I don't need 40 quid.
I remember doing one, and it was someone had their screen off, but not their microphone. Yeah. And I'm doing my thing, and I'd be going for about 5-6 minutes, and I just hear his voice go, "Oh God!" I was like, "All right, mate." But what was funny as well, when people were commenting about your hair when you came out as the pub landlord, it doesn't work. He's got hair. You go, what's he supposed to do?
Yeah, I wasn't going to cut it off for one evening in 6 months.
Oh, but this has been great.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great, mate. It's been lovely. I'm going to ask you this. What is your favourite tank? If you had to pick one.
Oh, that's a good question.
What would be your
I would say a Sherman Firefly.
Yeah?
Yeah. Because it's the standard, because it's this thing where they adapt the Sherman, the M4 Sherman. The British adapt the M4 Sherman, put a much bigger anti-tank gun on it to deal with Tiger tanks. And basically, the way they do it is so ingenious. They turn the gun on its side. The thinking that goes into it, and they deliver it bang on time, and it changes things quite dramatically when it arrives in Normandy in 1944. And I just love it because there's always this idea that about this sort of received idea about the Second War. The silly old British needed rescuing by everyone else, and they couldn't do things for themselves. And they were bad at technology and all that. It's just not true. Just not true.
No.
And so you got a little example there, and it's also like it's an American machine, but the British go, actually we can make that a whole lot better, and they do, and that's why I like it.
I find that sort of thing fascinating when the thinking behind all kind of engineering. When I see machines that make, I don't know, like make pasta or something, and I'm like, how think that it made the thing went in there, and then that came up, and then that went over the thing, and
that mechanized manufacturing is amazing. Because I have a drum company that makes drum kits, right? And we have a CNC machine, which is an automated cutting machine, right?
Right.
So basically, you put a JPEG into it, like a 3D JPEG into it, and you press off it, and it goes, and this blade's going, and out the other end comes this sort of perfectly carved. It can be anything. It can be a wardrobe. It can be just a small thing, and it just how did someone think of that? How did they get it to work? Why doesn't the blade come flying off and cut me in half? How did just all the basically? I mean, obviously I've found my lane, and we're better off me not trying to work out manufacturing processes, and the manufacturing people are probably better off not doing stand up. But it's that thing. I'm in awe of that sort of stuff. Completely in awe of it, and the thinking that goes into it, and then what you can do with it, like what you can get out the other end. I mean, I keep meaning to buy a 3D printer. A mate of mine's got a 3D printer, and apparently they are the shit.
Oh, really?
Just as a sort of like, what can I make today? How can I completely distract myself from from the things I need to? I know, you can make anything with them. If you've got a 3D rendering of it, you put it into the machine, and it goes go. You leave it overnight, and in the morning you've got your mug that's a dragon or whatever.
But I think it's a sign of my age as well now. I love watching videos of those things being made. Like the other day I watched a video of, I think it's a split pin. It looks like the top of a shepherd's, like an old shepherd's like staff with the bit. It looks like a musical, like a clef, whatever it is. And I watched this machine just make this split pin. Fascinating. And it's still
There's every now and again on Facebook someone will put up a thing, and it just shows endless things being manufactured, being bent into shape, or fence posts being flipped in on themselves or curled round and punched, and it's just amazing, and in the thousand repetitiously as well. That's the amazing thing. I mean, I could, you make one of those, but
that'd be my day. That's it. But Al, this has been lovely. You're going to be up here, aren't you?
Yeah, at the end of the month. I think the 22nd to the 29th, I think, is the plan. Although we may add some in. I'm not sure. We're not sure about that yet. Because basically, I love the Fringe so much. I like just walking around it, sort of being moved by I'm moved by the whole thing when I'm around it. I know what I'm supposed to say is it's not as good as it used to be. It's got too big. It's too commercial. I know I'm supposed to say all those things, but I can never bring myself to actually to say any of that stuff, because you look at all those people engaged we're all supposed to be engaged with the arts. We're supposed to think they're a brilliant thing, and that's what you've got. That's what it is. Whether it turns out that means you end up with some sort of insane behemoth that can't be controlled and that it's costing everyone a lot of money, that's a different question. But it's a boulevard of dreams. It's the most beautiful thing. It's the greatest show on earth.
You are, and with that in mind, I'm going to go and fling myself off into it. Thanks, Al.
It's a pleasure, mate. Lovely to talk to you. Yeah,
and you.
I'll see you up there.